ठीक है बेटा. Okay जी. So almost half the class is still sleeping. Still haven't got up from after setting. Okay. I think it's 10 o'clock, so it's time to get up finally and join the lecture if you feel like it. Acha ji, so in my last lecture, I did the anomalies of external genitalia. So now we are going to do the abnormalities of gender differentiation. This differentiation की abnormalities discuss करेंगे. Now, the gender of a baby, the confirmation is done on an ultrasound when the doctor sees that the testes are in the scrotum. That is 100% confirmation. Other than that, actually the problem arises because the doctor cannot look at the gender, see the gender, because between 22nd to 36 weeks, the gender is not well developed and it is not possible to determine the gender. दूसरी बात यह है कि at time error also arises because of the fetal position. The fetus may be lying in such a position that it obscures the external genitalia. So that also leaves us an error in determining the gender of the baby. Okay? So any error in sex determination and differentiation of sex is called intersexuality or hermaphroditism, जिनको हम hermaphrodites, जिनको हम ख्वाजा सरा कहते हैं या a cruel word to use as खुसरा कहते हैं. ठीक है? This abnormality arises when there is a discrepancy between the gonads and the appearance of external genitalia. By that I mean the gonad may be the testis, but the parents may be of female. That is what intersexuality or hermaphroditism means. The other thing is that there may be the presence of both the characteristics of both the genders in one individual. Male gender, female gender, दोनों की characteristics may be present in one individual. You have different types of hermaphrodites. You have true hermaphrodites, you have pseudo-hermaphrodites. Pseudo-hermaphrodites are further divided into male pseudo-hermaphrodites and female pseudo-hermaphrodites. True hermaphrodites are the ones that have both ovarian and testicular tissue, or they may have in the same gonad they may be having partly ovary, partly testes, so ovotestes कहते हैं. ठीक है? This develops. Just a quick recap, if you remember correctly, I told you that in an undifferentiated gonad, early undifferentiated stage जो होती है of development of gonad, उसमें if the cortex develop and the medulla regresses, the gonad will develop into an ovary. If the cortex regresses and the medulla develop, the gonad will develop into a testis. So testis में medulla develop करता है और ovary में cortex develop करता है. But if in one gonad, cortex and medulla both develop, बंद क्यों कर दिया? ठीक है, थैंक यू।
जरा मैं देख रहा था दोबारा
ये उस दिन भी हुआ था
जी मैंने कुछ सेटिंग तो की थी लेकिन इसके बावजूद नहीं हो रहा है। सर ने कुछ सेटिंग की थी डॉक्टर ने। अगर आप देखें
ठीक, थैंक यू। ठीक है, सो सॉरी फॉर दिस इंटरप्शन। हम बात कर रहे थे हेमाफ्रोडाइट्स। So, if in a gonad, both testicle, cortex and medulla, they both develop, we call this structure as ovotestes. Okay. In these individuals who have an ovotestes, or more rarely have both ovaries and testicular tissues, have ovary on one side, testes on the other side. These people are called true hermaphrodites. They have chromatin positive nuclei. The appearance, the phenotype means the appearance. The appearance may be of a male or of a female. Appearance कुछ भी हो सकती है, but the external genitalia are always ambiguous. Ambiguous external genitalia means that you cannot make out whether it is female external genitalia or male external genitalia. ठीक है? And the appearance could be of a male or a female. Now, in these types of cases, 70% the genetic makeup is 46XX. In another 20%, it is 46XS and 46XY. In mosaicism, they have both types of genotypes. Some cells have 46XX and some cells have 46XY. That is called mosaicism. आप already mosaicism पढ़ चुके हैं first year में. And then in 10% of cases, it is 46X5. ठीक है? In mosaicism, the ovarian tissue develops from the cells with X chromosomes, and the testicular tissue develops from cells with Y chromosomes. अच्छा जी, true hermaphroditism in 46XX genotype. This could be because of mosaicism. One X chromosome, the short arm of Y chromosome. ठीक है? These cells develop into testicular tissue, and the normal cells, since the genotype is XX, the normal cells will develop into ovarian tissue. However, one X chromosome may carry a small fragment of Y chromosome, short arm of Y chromosome. When the genetic makeup is 46XY, फिर क्या होता है? इसमें the SRY chromosome जो है ना, that undergoes mutation. In some cells, mutation occurs. As a result, mosaicism develop हो जाता है. इसमें जो normal cells होती हैं, since the makeup is XY, the normal cells develop into testicular tissues, and the mutated cells cells that have undergone mutation, they develop into ovarian tissue. So it is both ways. Pseudohermaphrodites. Pseudohermaphrodites में the external genitalia is of one gender, but the gonad is of the other gender. Meaning, the person may be a male, but the gonad that develops is an ovary. इनको हम pseudohermaphrodite कहते हैं. What is the cause of this pseudohermaphrodite? The cause could be that sex hormones in levels when they are abnormal. Adequate levels of sex hormones are not produced, or adequate levels of sex hormones may be there, but the receptors on which these hormones act, they are abnormal. They are either inadequate or they do not respond to the receptors have some abnormality as a result of which they do not respond to the testosterone produced. Female pseudohermaphroditis, इसमें it is 46XX. ठीक है? And the gonad is an ovary, but the external genitalia developed resembles that of a male. Ovaries है इसलिए clitoris, but there is enlargement of the clitoris and there is partial fusion of the labia majora, so it resembles the testes. Okay, this is partial fusion of the labia majora, which resembles the testes. Cause क्या है? Cause है कि during pregnancy the mother may be exposed to high levels of androgens, or there may be congenital adrenal hyperplasia. उसकी वजह से the mother may be suffering. Sorry, the mother is okay, but the baby, the fetus may have congenital adrenal hyperplasia. The adrenal gland undergoes hyperplasia. As a result, there is excessive production of androgens by the fetal suprarenal glands. मैं फिर explain कर देती हूँ. It is either the mother is exposed to high levels of androgens as it is, or the baby, the embryo that is developing, the fetus, that poor fetus may have developed hyperplasia of the by the fetal suprarenal glands. So when there is production of androgens, the external genitalia become male type. होता क्या है? This is the normal. We have a urinary bladder and a urethra opening into the vestibule. This is the uterus and the vagina, and this is the rectum and then the anal canal. But in these cases, female hermaphroditism, there is a small persistent urogenital sinus. आपको पता है normally urogenital sinus disappears because it is divided into three parts and all these parts develop into some structure or the other. But in this case, there's a small persistent urogenital sinus. देखिए, uh, in some cases, the masculinization that develops because of high levels of androgens. This is so intense that the external genitalia resemble the male type. So basically, the uterus has developed, but it is opening into the uterus. The uterus is opening into the urinary bladder, or the vagina may be opening into the masculinization, intense masculinization of external genitalia may occur. रीजन क्या है इस फीमेल सूडोहेर्माफ्रोडिटिज्म में? एक तो एंड्रोजन्स का लेवल हमने कहा था, हाई लेवल्स ऑफ एंड्रोजन्स either given to the mother during pregnancy for some reason, for some mode of treatment, or the mother has used progestational compounds because of threatened abortion. In order to treat threatened abortion, the mother was given progestational compounds. That results in this abnormalities. Another unfortunate condition may be that the mother may be suffering from any tumor of the ovary or anywhere that produces androgenic hormones, इनको masculinizing tumors कहते हैं. A tumor that produces androgenic hormones. So far, do we have any questions? Go ahead. Any questions, beta? I guess not. Let's move ahead. How many of you are there? 135 participants. Before I go any further, uh, I have an announcement to make. On the 19th, you will be having your first substage of head and neck. Instead of embryology test is going to be on the 9th of June. 9th of June is the embryology test, and that will include, the embryology test will include body cavities, cardiovascular system, development of cardiovascular system, and development of the entire urogenital system. पहले मैंने कहा था, it's only the urinary system. Now it is the entire urogenital system. ठीक है? जबकि जो 19th को फर्स्ट सब स्टेज है हेड एंड नेक की, उसमें स्कल होगा बेटा, स्कैल्प, फेस, पैरोटिड रीजन, टेम्पोरल रीजन, इंफ्राटेम्पोरल रीजन. ठीक है? इंफ्राटेम्पोरल फॉसा में उसके कंटेंट्स भी होंगे, जिनमें मसल्स ऑफ मैस्टिकेशन, पैरोटिड, maxillary artery, maxillary nerve, mandibular nerve, and temporomandibular joint. All this will be included in your first substage coming up on the 19th. Now, do we have any questions? None. So you have taken it well. Good. 19th को आपका टेस्ट है, and 21st से hopefully inshallah I think ईद की छुट्टियां स्टार्ट हो जाएंगी, so ईद से पहले हम फारग हो जाएंगे with your first test, first substage, head and neck. Okay. Let's start with the male pseudohermaphroditism. इसमें the genetic makeup is 46XY, chromatin negative है. ठीक है? अब इसमें इंटरनल एंड एक्सटर्नल जेनिटेलिया ये वेरिएबल किस्म के होते हैं. जेनेटिक डिफेक्ट होता है इनमें, एंड दैट जेनेटिक डिफेक्ट इज जो एंजाइम्स दैट सिंथेसाइज टेस्टोस्टेरोन, उनकी म्यूटेशन हो जाती है. म्यूटेशन ऑफ द एंजाइम, mutation in the enzyme synthesis of testosterone. As a result, there is inadequate production of testosterone, also Mullerian inhibiting substance. In दोनों levels जो हैं, they are inadequate. As a result, there is a Mullerian inhibiting substance, if you remember, acts on the paramesonephric ducts and suppresses the paramesonephric duct. When the level of Mullerian inhibiting substance is inadequate, so paramesonephric duct development uh, undergoes development, variable degree of development of the paramesonephric duct does occur. जबकि mesonephric duct जो है, since testosterone की level कम है, testosterone acts on the mesonephric duct. जब उसकी testosterone की level कम होगी, the mesonephric duct will not differentiate well. So the testicular development है could be normal or it could be rudimentary, variable होती है. But as a result, at puberty, the level of testosterone fails to rise. Normally, puberty में is a surge, sudden increase level of testosterone, and that acts on the external genitalia and stimulates them to grow rapidly. But in these cases, since the level of testosterone is not adequate, it is below normal, so the external genitalia, they do not develop. So this is another condition called androgen insensitivity syndrome. इसको testicular feminization भी कहते हैं, X-linked recessive disorder होता है, rare है, 1 in 20,000 live births में होता है. इसमें जो genetic makeup है, that is 46XY. Testis is present, but what happens is that the androgen receptors are absent. Testis present है, normal है, but the androgen receptors are absent. So, since the testosterone cannot act on the receptors, there is no development of male genitalia, and उसमें क्या होगा कि ये जो receptors होते हैं in tissues in which the androgen receptors are present, that means receptors for the testosterone and Mullerian inhibiting substance. Since ye receptors are present in the genital tubercle, urethral folds and labioscrotal swellings. अब जब receptors नहीं होंगे, so the genital tubercle does not respond to urethral folds and labioscrotal swellings. They do not respond to testosterone. The receptors missing है. अब Mullerian inhibiting substance जो है उसका level कम है, तो as a result अब paramesonephric duct जो है वो sorry Mullerian inhibiting substance है, as a result ये paramesonephric duct is depressed कर जाएगी, uterine tube absent है, vagina whatever little develops ends in a blind pouch. Testis in these conditions could be either in the abdomen or in the inguinal canal or in the labioscrotal swellings. Partial androgen insensitivity syndrome, PBX-linked recessive है, इसमें masculinization does occur, even though it is not normal, it is below normal, but it does occur. Genitally ambiguous होते हैं, because meaning you cannot make out whether it is male external genitalia or female external genitalia. Clitoris is enlarged, uterus developed नहीं होती, vagina ends blindly. Testes are either in the inguinal canal or in the labia majora. In these cases of androgen insensitivity syndrome, the testis has to be removed, because if it remains either in the abdomen or in the inguinal canal, they are liable to undergo malignant change. 1/3 of cases में testes located in the abnormal location, present in the abnormal location, undergo malignant tumors. So that is why they have to be removed. Okay, um, this was the end of the this topic, which is development of urogenital system. Finally, we finished with it, and now we start with the
दोबारा सुनेगा
ठीक है ओके मुझे कर दिए
जी मैम
अनम्यूट करके
अनम्यूट ही है मैम
ठीक है थैंक यू लो जी नाउ वी स्टार्ट विद द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ स्कल क्योंकि जब आपने मस्कुलर सिस्टम फर्स्ट ईयर में किया था तो यू डिड एवरीथिंग बट यू डिड नॉट डू द स्कल आई थिंक हम तो उनको नहीं करवाया करते थे बिकॉज आप लोगों ने स्कल पढ़ी नहीं होती तो उसकी डेवलपमेंट जो है दैट it's impossible to understand the development of the skull until unless you study the skull. So, keeping that thing in mind, I thought okay, I'll first give you a quick recap of what the skull is. Achha, before I go any further, beta, do we have any questions? Anything you haven't understood? Any questions regarding the substage or first substage head and neck coming on the 19th or second test in embryology coming on the 9th of June. Substage on the 19th of May before Eid and okay fine there are no questions. Let's not waste time. This is the skull. Okay? Front view, the green bone is the frontal bone. The frontal bone articulates with this bone, which forms most of the part of the nose. This is the nasal bone. So the frontal bone articulates with the nasal bone. Please note that all this green bone forms, the frontal bone forms upper or superior margin of the forehead. This purple bone, this is the maxilla. This maxilla articulates with this blue bone, which is the zygomatic bone. Okay. This part of the zygomatic bone articulates with the frontal bone. Together they make a suture. So this is the frontal process of this is the frontal process of the zygomatic bone, and this is the frontal bone that articulates with the zygomatic bone. This would be the zygomatic process of the frontal bone. This is the maxilla, zygomatic bone. You all have. This is the frontal bone. Please note that the lower margin of the orbit that is the this frontal process of G. Sorry for the interruption. अच्छा जी, so हम बात pink bone. बेटा क्या repeat करना है? Can you tell me what to repeat, Vijay? I will repeat. No problem. Frontal key attachments. Okay, fine. Fine. Thank you. So this was the frontal bone. The frontal bone joins with or articulates with the nasal bone. ठीक है? This purple bone is the maxilla. ये सारी maxilla है. ये इसका suture है. This lighter blue is the zygomatic bone. This is the suture between the maxilla and the zygomatic bone. ये zygomatic है, ये maxilla है. ये maxilla का part है which is joining the frontal bone. Frontal is green, maxilla is purple. So between these two, you have this part of the maxilla. Since it joins the frontal bone, it is called the frontal process of maxilla. Maxilla का frontal process. और ये frontal bone है, ये join कर रही है maxilla को. So this will be the maxillary process of frontal bone. Frontal bone का maxillary process. Now, at the other end, the frontal bone is also coming in contact with the zygomatic bone. ये blue to zygomatic bone and everything. So this part of the zygomatic bone, which joins the frontal bone, this part of the zygomatic bone is called the frontal process of zygomatic bone. Because zygomatic bone join कर रही है frontal bone. और ये frontal bone है. This is articulating with the zygomatic bone. So this is the zygomatic process of this bone, which is frontal bone. अभी तक क्लियर है? अच्छा, अब lateral view पे चले जाएं. Lateral view में this is, thank you my dear, thank you. Let's go ahead. So the green is the frontal bone. ठीक है, हमने यही डिटरमिन किया था. हमने ये भी कहा था कि the orbit का border है, that is made by frontal bone. इसका lateral border जो है, that is made at the top by the frontal bone. Lower down, lower 2/3, ये zygomatic bone से बना था. Inferior border of the orbit, partly laterally zygomatic से और medially maxilla से बना था. जबकि जो medial border है, वो at the top superior half में frontal से बना और inferior half में maxilla से बना. ये colors देख के you can remember it very easily. So this green, when you see the lateral view, the green is the frontal bone. This orange is the parietal bone. This pink is the occipital bone. This blue you all know is the zygomatic bone. You see the zygomatic bone articulating with the frontal bone over here. The frontal process of zygomatic bone. And this yellow or mustard or brown, this entire bone that you see is the temporal bone up to here. This is called the zygomatic arch. The zygomatic arch, please note, the zygomatic arch is formed partly by the temporal bone, और ये mustard देख लीजिए या yellow bone देख लीजिए. This yellow is made by the temporal bone and also contributed by the zygomatic bone. So this arch is formed by both zygomatic arch is formed by two bones, the zygomatic process of the temporal bone and the temporal process of the zygomatic bone. यहाँ पे देख लीजिए temporal process zygomatic bone का ये temporal process है. A temporal bone, since it is forming the zygomatic arch, so this part of the temporal bone is called the zygomatic process of the temporal bone. थोड़ा सा tongue twister है, लेकिन if you just see the sutures and remember the names of the bone, nothing will be difficult. अच्छा, अब ये जो temporal bone है ना, it has several parts. You can see this structure. This is the mastoid process. The mastoid process. So it is mastoid part of the temporal bone. ये देख लीजिए, ये this is the styloid process. This is also part of the temporal bone. ये zygomatic process, also part of the temporal bone, and this is the squamous part of the temporal bone. Okay, so mastoid part, squamous part, zygomatic part, styloid part, all parts of the temporal bone, and this is the external auditory meatus. अभी तक clear है बेटा? Let me go ahead then. This I hope थोड़ा सा आपका skull मैंने recap कर दिया. That was the main aim. अच्छा जी, अब मैंने जी बेटे, thank you my dear, thank you so much. If it is clear, अब मैंने deliberately ये table I haven't removed it ताकि आप अगर मेरी बात आपको ना समझ आए तो आप इन कलर्स को फॉलो करते जाइए. This is the top of the skull has been cut off. इसको हम calvaria कहते हैं. And we see the interior of the skull. This is the cranial cavity. ठीक है? Cranial cavity में if you follow the blue, sorry, I'm so sorry. The green. Blue नहीं बेटे, green. You follow the green, वही colors हैं. The green bone is the frontal, and all these are the markings of the brain. Okay, so the green is frontal, and this bright yellow, ये जो है ना, ये ethmoid bone है, and you can see these perforations, dot. This is because it has multiple holes in it. This ethmoid bone has multiple holes in it. These holes give it the appearance of a sieve. जो छलनी नहीं होती जिससे आटा छानते हैं, उसकी तरह की ये sieve like appearance देता है. That is why it is called cribriform plate of the ethmoid in the center. Okay? Between the two frontal bones, right and left frontal bones, ये frontal crest होती है. Between the two frontal bones, this is the cribriform plate of the ethmoid. अच्छा, अब this pink bone, this is the entire pink bone is the sphenoid. Sphenoid bone के भी काफी सारे parts हैं. This is the body of the sphenoid. Okay. In the body of the sphenoid, you have this depression which is called pituitary fossa. because this is where the pituitary gland will lie in the living. Anterior clinoid process, ये सारी जो है ये लेसर विंग है, यहाँ तक ये सारा लेसर विंग ऑफ स्फीनॉइड है, ये सारा बॉडी ऑफ द स्फीनॉइड है मिड लाइन में, ये लैटरली फिर ये सारा लेसर विंग ऑफ स्फीनॉइड है और इस लेसर विंग ऑफ स्फीनॉइड डाउन हियर यू हैव द ग्रेटर विंग ऑफ स्फीनॉइड, ये सारा ठीक है, दिस इज द ग्रेटर विंग ऑफ स्फीनॉइड। और इसमें ये देख लीजिए, ये यू हैव दी स्मॉल ओपनिंग्स, ये मल्टीपल फोरामेन है, दिस इज द फोरामेन ओवेल, फोरामेन ओवेल में से मैंडिबुलर नर्व पास करती है। posterior posterolateral to it is the foramen spinosum, foramen spinosum में से middle meningeal artery pass करती है। Then over here, ये दोनों, this is the foramen rotundum, foramen rotundum में से maxillary nerve pass करती है। ये आप बार बार पढ़ोगे आपको याद हो जाएगा। Then let's come to this bone in mustard or figure out. So this is a site where four bones meet, frontal, and they make up a suture, an H-shaped suture. ठीक है, ये H, letter H-shaped suture. इस hole, this point where four bones meet, this point is called terion. ठीक है, this is extremely important because जब fracture होता है over here, if this one of these bones at this level is fractured, it may damage the artery that is running deep to it. Arteries is other vein, artery and vein running deep to it. Beta, middle meningeal artery that supplies the meninges divides into two branches, anterior branch running like this, posterior branch running like this. So the anterior branch, the middle meningeal artery runs across like this. So any fracture at this site will damage the middle meningeal artery and vein. At times this meningeal artery is actually lying in a tunnel inside this bone. Okay, one of these bones. So it is very close to the theria. Here's the important practical theme. Clinical. So we were talking about this was the petrous part of the temporal bone. ये सारी जो mustard थी, ये जो है ना, this that I'm outlining, ये squamous part of the temporal bone है। ठीक है जी? So please note that the petrous part and the squamous part join each other at this suture. अच्छा, ये देखिए, ये मैंने आपसे कहा था कि foramen spinosum lying postlateral to the foramen vein. ये foramen spinosum है, इसमें से middle meningeal artery गुजर रही है. So this middle meningeal artery arises from outside. It arises from the maxillary artery in the neck, on the face in fact, enters the foramen spinosum and enters the skull. Skull means this is the middle meningeal. It is dividing into two branches, anterior branch, posterior branch. ये देख लीजिए, the anterior branch is crossing this point. ये point है where four bones meet. This is the terion, and you see the anterior branch of the middle meningeal artery crossing the inside of the theria. ठीक है बेटा? Is this thing clear? Are you with me? Okay, fine. Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much if you're with me. Okay, so this is the petrous temporal bone. This is the squamous part of the temporal bone. और भी इसके parts हैं. We'll do them later on. अच्छा जी, this is now the occipital bone. This entire thing is this is the squamous part of the temporal bone. ये depth में इसलिए है because this is the part where the cerebellum lies. Cerebellum is part of the brain. So this is called the cerebellar fossa. And lying within the occipital bone, this is the foramen magnum. Foramen magnum. जिसमें से spinal cord, meninges. This foramen, jugular foramen है, and this is the internal acoustic meatus. अभी आपको मैंने external acoustic meatus दिखाया था, air की outer जो opening है. This is the inner opening of the air, which is called internal acoustic. Acoustic is anything to do with hearing. So this internal acoustic meatus, and this is the basilar part of the occipital bone का basilar part. And this over here, this foramen is the hypoglossal foramen. इसमें से hypoglossa 12 nerve हो सकती है. Okay, coming to this side, this is the base of the skull. इसको dorma basalis कहते हैं. ठीक है? So base of the skull में purple अगर आपको याद हो तो हमने determine किया था कि जो purple था वो सारा maxilla था. So this the two ये inside से fossa है. यहाँ palatine ये pink में जो है these are the ठीक है palatine bone इनमें ये greater and lesser palatine foramen. So the palatine bones anteriorly then meet the maxillary bones that form the base. अब ये सारा please note that what you over here is the hard palate, the under surface of the hard palate. So the hard palate is formed by the maxilla and by the palatine bones. ठीक है, the palatine bones articulate with each other in the midline. ये देख लीजिए. अच्छा, ये midline में this is the partition of the nose. ये green में जो है this is called vomer. It is a separate bone that forms a partition of the nose. This at the back, ये जो है posterior nasal openings है. Okay. These two are called pterygoid plates. Medial pterygoid plate, lateral pterygoid plate. ठीक है बेटा? ये भी temporal bones की part है. This is what is called. ये सारा वही आपकी temporal bone चल रही है. Zygomatic process of temporal bone. This is where the mandible will articulate. So it is called the mandibular fossa. ये देख लीजिए outer opening of the ear, external acoustic meatus. इधर हमने देखा था petrous temporal bone में internal acoustic meatus. ठीक है जी. This is once again the petrous temporal bone. अब ये देख लीजिए, ये styloid process है. The styloid process. This is the mastoid process. वही जो हमने यहाँ पे देखा था. Mastoid process, styloid process. ये external auditory meatus है. जी बेटे, pterygoid process temporal पे और या sphenoid पे. एक मिनट, अभी देखिए मैं आपको दिखा देती हूँ. sphenoid है पिंक में, ठीक है. तो ये स्टाइलर प्रोसेस है, ये मास्टर प्रोसेस है. आगे चलते हैं. पिंक में बेटा, ये पिंक जो सारा है ना, दिस पिंक इज स्फीनोइड बोन. ठीक है. ये भी, इधर भी स्फीनो. वैसे तो कहते हैं दिस pterygoid plates are separate bones, but yes, generally for your reading, ये स्फीनोइड का पार्ट है. ये टेम्पोरल बोन है बेटा, येलो में, मस्टर्ड में. दिस इज द टेम्पोरल बोन. ये भी टेम्पोरल बोन का पार्ट है. ये वही है, ठीक है. ये इसी का ही पार्ट है. ओके. petrous temporal bone. अब ये ऑरेंज में, सॉरी, ये पर्पल में, दिस इज द occipital bone. दिस इज वेयर ये पार्ट आर्टिकुलेट करता है with the first cervical vertebra. This is the occipital condyle कहते हैं, and this is the basi-occiput, the basilar part of the occiput. This is the foramen magnum. Between the pterygoid plates and the petrous temporal bone, this foramen is called foramen lacerum. यहाँ पे देख लीजिए, apex of petrous temporal bone, ये वाला जो आपको ओपनिंग नजर आ रही है, ये this is foramen lacerum over here. This is foramen lacerum over here. ये jugular foramen यहाँ पे है. Between the petrous temporal bone and the occipital bone, you have the jugular foramen. यहाँ पे jugular foramen would be somewhere over here. ठीक है. Do I make myself clear, बेटा? बस हम डेवलपमेंट तो कर ही नहीं सके, मैं आपको सारी रिवाइज करती रह गई. So do we have any questions before I wind up? Okay, thank you very much, beta. I hope you are clear about your substage. 19. ठीक है. मैंने इसलिए deliberately आपको ये स्कल रिवाइज करवाया, प्रॉब्लम ना हो. Okay. God bless you all, and I'll see you.